Welcome to The Road to Zero, a future-proof podcast, as we explore the changing nature of our economy as we look for prosperity and opportunity in not only preserving, but also improving our environment. Today on The Road to Zero, we have Jean-Louis Kindler, Chief Executive Officer of Ways2H. Welcome, Jean-Louis, and we're excited to have you with us today.
Thank you, Niels. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope you will find my answers and our conversation interesting.
I'm sure we will. So today you are just to get it right. Today I'm on my boat in Salt Spring, and I'm assuming you're in Los Angeles today.
Absolutely. Our office is in Long Beach, but due to some circumstances, we are all working from home, and I'm connecting from East Los Angeles.
Okay, and I can probably assume which circumstances you're talking about.
Probably.
Perfect. All right. So before we dive into Ways2H and what you've been up to, can you tell us about how you got involved into the clean tech industry? What was your journey into that particular industry?
Ooh, it's a long journey. I graduated university in 1985, so the last century, and that was in France. And I did not want to work in France then, so I set my choice on Japan, and I traveled to Japan and I stayed there, and I created a consulting office there where I was helping Japanese companies and mostly small and medium-sized companies to develop and market their technologies outside of Japan. And very quickly, because at that time already Japan was very much advanced and very much concerned about environmental questions, I ended up working and kind of naturally getting into the clean tech area. So, and this is what I have been doing since then. So we're talking 35 years now.
That's a long time. Wow. And then now in Long Beach, so you've traveled quite a bit in your days.
Oh yes, I spent 22 years in Japan. I left the country in 2006, went back to France for a while, and then moved again here in Los Angeles in 2013. So I have, if I were putting up a CV, I would say I have work experience on 3 continents.
Yeah, I'm sure it gives you a very broad perspective, I imagine. Very helpful in the industry you're in.
Absolutely. Well, I hope so, at least.
And tell us a bit about Ways2H. It sounds like Ways2H came out of one of those partnerships, I believe, with the Japan Blue Energy Corporation. Some work you did there. And tell us a bit about what Ways2H is and what you guys are up to.
Absolutely. Well, so I just say that I left Japan in 2006, and the last five years I spent in Japan, I spent them working with Japan Blue Energy. At that time, I was responsible for the engineering and construction of the first prototype of the technology that they had developed to process waste and extract hydrogen out of it. So at that time, keep in mind it was between 2001 and 2006. So we were basically considered as some sort of aliens trying to produce hydrogen for clean mobility. But it was really a very interesting experience. That after the first prototype was completed, I chose to move on to another challenge, which was related to acquiring a company in France. But JBEC, Japan Blue Energy, kept on developing the technology, and it was about 2-3 years ago, in 2018, where I was here in Los Angeles, and I met a group of investors, a group of individuals who were interested in basically doing something for their grandchildren, and looking at developing clean tech, and more specifically a hydrogen-related project. And then I reconnected with Japan Blue Energy and found out that they had kept on developing the technology. They were at the 4th generation. So they built, after the one I built, they built a second one, a third one, and finally a 4th pilot that actually was commissioned in 2018. And this is when we decided that we would start this partnership. So Ways2H, as you rightly said, is the result of a partnership between Clean Energy Enterprises, which is the company where the investors are gathered here in Long Beach, and Japan Blue Energy. So Japan Blue Energy contributed the technology, and of course the investors contributed their experience, management, and funds to develop Ways2H. Ways2H's job being to engineer, build, and sell the systems that embed JBEX technology.
And just to get an idea of how it works, so this thing takes whatever comes out of the sewage treatment plant, the dry stuff, once you take the water out, I imagine the sludge, and puts it to some kind of process. Can you give us an idea of what it does to produce that hydrogen?
Yes, exactly. Well, it's this unit that was just commissioned in Japan is processing sewage sludge, but basically the process is designed to handle any chemically organic matter. Chemically organic meaning that it contains carbon and hydrogen. And we use the carbon that is contained in the feedstock as the energy source for the process to extract the hydrogen that is in that same feedstock. So it is a totally self-contained, self-sustainable process. It does not need external energy source to operate. And yes, so what we typically handle is sewage sludge, on which we have significant data that we already took in the previous pilots, but also construction waste, wood chips, as well as municipal solid waste. And yes, when I say municipal solid waste, it's important because it also contains plastics. And so typically anything that is, again, chemically organic, so biomass, textile, wood, food waste, etc., but also plastics, which is obviously crude oil, which was organic, which was biomass 300 million years ago. And this feedstock is subject to heat. It's basically heated to temperature at about 700 degrees C. And at that temperature, what we call the volatiles that are part of the feedstock, they literally vaporize, and we end up with what we call a syngas, which is a mix of hydrogen, methane, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and water. Then we further process this gas to push the hydrogen contents. We extract hydrogen, and this is how we get our product.
And then what happens then you have some of the other stuff. What happens with what's the other output of the process?
So yes, we are no magicians. So whatever gets into the system has to go out. Typically biomass and again, what we call, from now on I will say organic matter, but I mean chemically organic. Organic matter does usually contain a fraction of ash. That's inert matter, that's metals, minerals, so that just like when you burn a log, you will get ash. It's about the same thing. So there is ash that goes out of the process. Typically, it would be 2, 3, 4% of the initial mass of the feedstock we put in, and the bulk of the byproduct is a flue gas that basically contains does contain CO2 as well as steam. But what is really important to realize here is that this carbon dioxide, because it comes from a renewable source, biomass and organic matter is renewable, except of course for the plastic fraction. But typically in municipal solid waste, we usually don't have more than 10-15% maximum of plastic. So this CO2 does not contribute adding fossil carbon to the atmosphere. And of course, the hydrogen that we produce is here to replace fossil origin energy. And so we have a process that is carbon neutral, essentially. And but and this is very important, if and when we will connect our solution to carbon sequestration processes, then our solution becomes carbon negative, and it means literally taking out CO2 from the atmosphere to put it back underground. And this is the ultimate goal for our technology.
Yeah, because I really hear like a lot of stuff you're burning for the most part is grew on plants, took some carbon out as it went through our food system and ends up, of course, in the waste stream. And at least having a very high concentrated of flue CO2 output looks like that would be very much easy to integrate with a carbon capture system. And there's
Exactly.
definitely a lot of new technologies. Do you have anything you're specifically looking at now, or is that something more for later development?
We are, I cannot say the names yet, but we are in discussion with a couple of companies that already have a carbon sequestration process. Um, and we expect to be able to start talking about it, hopefully very soon. It's
Yeah,
not it's
yeah, that
not
would
our
be.
technology. It's not Ways2H's technology, so it will be through partnerships. But we would like to develop relationship with a few selected companies, not necessarily one, because carbon sequestration in a lot of cases is very site dependent. So it being able to use a certain technology on a certain site does not necessarily mean we will be able to use that same technology elsewhere.
Mm.
So we try to be agnostic, but of course we believe a lot in partnerships, and it means that we would like to develop special relationships with a few companies.
And just to get an idea of the economics of what this brings, so you look at a regular waste processing facility and bringing this system in, and of course you're generating the hydrogen and creating an income with the hydrogen. What does the economics of it look? Does it does it is it would it be cost neutral compared to the cost of the existing, or would it be a higher cost and you're getting a better product, or would it actually offset costs of waste treatment systems?
The We made a calculation earlier for a company for a waste processing company in California, who is currently they are waste haulers. They do some sorting, but they still send a significant fraction of the waste that they collect to landfills. So they have a hard cost, which is trucking and paying the gate fee to the landfill. And of course, that waste in the landfill will generate methane, massive amount of greenhouse gas, etc. Over a period of 20 years, the difference the difference between that hard cost of sending that waste to landfill and operating our system selling hydrogen is about $40 million in difference. So it's far from being neutral. It actually the systems themselves, even if we don't compare with an existing situation, typically a system like ours, based of course on the economics of receiving a tipping fee for the waste, typically systems would pay for themselves in a few years,
Okay, and
less
then
than
after
20
that,
years.
there's an extra income coming in, so it's a
Absolutely,
very
absolutely.
economical proposition.
Absolutely. And this is considering a very, very sharp decrease in price in the sales price of hydrogen. Because right now, I just read in the news, I think it was yesterday, that hydrogen at the pump in British Columbia, Canada, had reached $10 or something. So it's it's
Yeah,
it's a
that's correct.
significant progress from the 14, $15 we see here in California. But obviously, the whole industry is looking at hydrogen production costs that would be between $1 and $2 a kilogram, so that the price at the pump would eventually be $4 or $5, which would, by the way, be equivalent, if not cheaper, than what we pay today with gasoline. So, considering this kind of price level, our systems still pay for themselves in a few years.
And what other projects do you have on the horizon other than the one and I guess the one in Japan, is it a demonstration project or is it a full scale municipal does it handle all the waste of that facility, or is it just more a demonstration?
No, it's for us. It has a dual role. First, it is a demonstration, and our partner JBEC is well. is hoping that this will follow by larger systems orders. But it has a dual role in the sense that this unit that we designed, 1 ton per day processing capacity, it fits within 3 containers, and this is, in a way, it is a commercial solution, because we do see an application for this in medical waste processing on site for hospitals. In other words, hospitals today, they pay a significant amount of money to have their medical waste being processed. In a lot of cases, it is trucking and hauling in very, very on very long distances. What we offer for the hospitals is a solution where the waste would be processed locally and would be used to produce hydrogen that would in turn produce the electricity that the hospital needs on a constant and on a very, very reliable basis for life-sustaining equipment. So it is also a commercial solution. But in terms of projects, we are currently building another sister system for this 1 ton per day machine that we will install here in California. We expect to have it in summer here. And we have already started commercial discussions for larger stationary units that will be our bread and butter. Typically, our standard systems would process about 24 tons per day of waste to produce approximately 1.5 tons of hydrogen per day. And this figure is important because 1.5 tons is about 300 vehicles, and it is what an average gasoline stand in the US is servicing today, 300 vehicles. So we do see our solution really as a decentralized way to process waste, so to reduce the logistics on the waste, of course, to divert that waste from landfills, but also to produce hydrogen where it will be needed on the fueling station. So it really is delocalized waste processing and hydrogen production.
That's a really interesting application. It's really interesting how small you were able to develop your unit. I can almost, especially on a campus model like a hospital, where literally all their waste goes there, and instead of having a backup diesel generator where a lot of these places tend to have, then you just have hydrogen storage tanks and fuel cells, and then whatever is excess, you can either power it or even fuel the ambulances.
Exactly. And our partner JBEC in Japan is also seeing a significant market for not necessarily, maybe not 1 ton, but let's say 1 to 3 tons per day processing capacity systems that would be installed on industries, on private companies' campus, where they do produce waste and where they need where the waste processing in Japan is quite expensive, and so companies using systems like this, so again, small scale systems, would be able to significantly reduce their external waste processing costs and generate their own energy. And it is also something that we are looking at here in the US. But it is also a fact that today our primary market in the US is the waste processing industry, because they are facing a major issue. They're facing a problem not only in California, where there are landfill diversion mandates, and so they have to find a solution. They have to find an alternative to landfilling the waste. And it is also an opportunity for them to get into this beautiful hydrogen bandwagon, because there's a whole industry, a whole economy that is developing right now, and it's a great opportunity for them.
Yeah, it seems like it's a solution perfect for the dilemmas that we're experiencing. We're trying to find low carbon energy fuels, and at the same time resolving and especially like New York, Los Angeles, the stories of ships of garbage having to try to find a place and not know where to put it. So definitely, it's a beautiful solution that way.
Exactly, and again, it isn't this. It's true here in the U.S., but it's also the same in Europe. There are, there are. I mean, I come from France. You probably understood from my accent, uh, and I would not say all landfills, but most landfills in France are facing a truly problematic situation. They're all getting full, and for example, we're talking to a prospect in France who is exactly facing this situation. The local landfill will be full in 10 years from now. They need to find a solution because 10 years is tomorrow, or maybe not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow. And so
Yeah.
it is a true problem. It is a true problem, and we believe that we offer a solution to this problem. And again, it's a solution. It's one single solution to two issues: producing a clean, renewable fuel and addressing this waste processing problems.
Yeah, and I see really, and what in the future. So I hear there's definitely more development and finding more customers. What else do you see as the future for Ways2H? You have this working facility in Japan and a system, and what other big changes in technology development do you see other than combining this with carbon capture to make a truly carbon negative process?
Well, it is already quite a challenging goal, but we really do see we have a worldwide market, and we very clearly intend to address this worldwide market. So of course, we're still a young company. We're not. We're about 2 years old now. Um, we are, like I said earlier, we're building this demonstrator for California here. Our next step will be to develop presence in Europe and to really make a difference and show that the waste to hydrogen pathway is a truly available pathway. We talk a lot. There are a lot of talks, and don't misunderstand me. I'm a big fan of this, but there's a lot of talks about green hydrogen, which is the hydrogen being produced out of electrolysis powered by renewable electricity. This is it's very important to be able to produce more and more hydrogen because demand is already growing and will be growing exponentially. But what we see here, we see a situation where the power grid is more and more loaded by additional demand. Um, Electric vehicles are actually coming earlier than we thought, and this is already a load on the grid that did not exist before. Um, the grid, which by the way, the worldwide average is about 30% renewable, so it's 70% non-renewable. So the power that we draw to charge our electric vehicles in some cases is renewable, but it's not always the case. We do see an increasing demand on power for Bitcoin mining, for data processing, and then we would need an additional demand on power, which again still needs to be renewable to produce that hydrogen. And really, I insist on that. I don't think it is a bad thing. Um, using renewable electricity wherever we have it to produce hydrogen is absolutely fine, but there, there's a need for alternative solutions, and our solution is one of those alternative solutions that will not draw power from the grid, and again at the same time that will solve the problem we have with waste.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It almost offers a baseline power solution. When you have a mountain of sludge, you can just keep feeding the system, and if you got too much power in the grid, and then the beauty with hydrogen, you can just store it. And there's so many great storage technologies coming out, including even just storing it in a salt cavern if you want to, just to have a massive amount of it.
You're totally right, and it is actually when we started the company again 2 years ago. We had lots of conversations with waste processing companies here in the US and who called us because they heard about our solution and they were looking for a solution. for a way to process their waste. And the problem they had then was what are we going to do with hydrogen? And again, it's 1 year ago, so it's not that long ago, but they were wondering that, and in a way it is still true, that today, if today we produce hydrogen, what are we going to do with this hydrogen if we consider this as just as a fuel for clean mobility? And so at that time, what we were telling them, and it is still definitely a pathway for using this hydrogen, was power generation, feeding the grid. Ultimately, I really do see our solution as a way to produce hydrogen as a fuel, but we should not disregard the fact that there are still plenty of areas in the world that are remote, that are off-grid. And we do, even here in California, for example, we saw that with the wildfires, we still have a problem with our grid here. So finding a solution to support and to develop an infrastructure that would end up in being a power generation microgrid is something that makes total sense everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, and I especially hear it from, especially the northern communities in the Canadian Arctic. Imagine just be able to take their garbage, because a lot of places you're on the tundra, so I'm sure it's complex to even try to get rid of it when you can't dig because the ground's frozen, and just having something that then can supply the fuel that you need without having to have it transported would be very vital.
Oh yes, it's very interesting you mentioned that, because in our commercial presentation, we have a photo that I find absolutely fascinating. There's a photo of a diesel tanker truck that literally is sinking in the road, sinking. And this is something that is totally new to those communities, but thanks to some people call the so-called climate change or global warming. So thanks to this very real global warming, we do see the roads that lead to those northern communities. The roads are melting. This is and so the problem that the Canadian government has, for example, is that there are 300 or so of those communities. The only link to I'm sorry to say that, to civilization, I mean to the world, is this road that now for several months during the year cannot be used. So they reach a point where they have to carry diesel for the generators with an helicopter. Can you think of the cost? This is insane. And of course, these communities,
and
they are normal human beings. They generate waste, and this is what I always say. I say, wherever there is human activity, there is waste, and wherever there is human activity, there is a need for energy. And this is exactly what we are fulfilling.
No, it's a lot of points, and having those small, compact type of solutions that are multi-purpose, taking care of your waste problem, creating yourself some energy would be really vital, and it makes it even more cost effective in those type of situations.
Absolutely.
And then for Ways2H, I hear there's definitely a lot happening. And what's your priority? Is it finding new investors, or finding new projects, or building up the corporation and hiring more people? Where are you guys at? And what do you guys need?
All of these. We are currently in a fundraising round. Thanks to a very active presence online, we are getting quite a lot of inquiries. So, but we are always interested in addressing any new challenge or any new inquiry incoming. We have a lot of inquiries coming from Europe, from North America, South America, Southeast Asia, everywhere, you name it. And this is also why we actually need to raise additional funds, is because we need to develop the company to, I would say, if I may use that word, to beef up the engineering teams, because we do see ourselves facing a situation in a few months where we will have commercial projects that we will need to handle, and we will need the staff to do that. So we have partnerships with EPC, engineering, procurement, construction firms that will do most of the engineering and fabrication footwork. But of course, we need to control that, and we manage the business development for this technology. So we do need to develop the company. And as I mentioned earlier, your presence in Europe is also important to us. So yes, we are interested in. We're raising capital. We are interested in any incoming inquiry for new projects, and we are also interested in developing partnerships with complementary technologies. I mentioned carbon sequestration, but we handle hydrogen. So hydrogen saturation, for example, is something where we are very much interested in not necessarily acquiring, but again, developing know-how and engineering partnerships around us.
So I see lots of opportunity ahead of you, and you're going to be, I think, a very busy man for some time.
Well, I should not really say that, but I must confess that the pandemic, the situation that I alluded to when we started this conversation, has kind of driven us to working from home. And in a way, it kind of helps because I don't have the commuting time every day. And my wife's not so happy with this, but it means I'm at my desk sometimes in the middle of the night because we're doing webinars in Europe or in Asia, and so yes, it's in a way being able to meet just like we're doing together today, being able to meet electronically online has actually expanded our scope and has actually broadened our activities. I do not totally complain.
Well, thank you very much for really sharing what you're up to and giving us that vision of what we're going to see coming in the near future around us.
Well, thank you, Niels. It was a pleasure. I'm happy to address any question or any further comment you might have. And well, whenever you need, I'll be happy to be back.
Perfect. Yeah, and for any of our viewers, just put any questions or comments on the web pages, the YouTube, or our webpage, futureproof-network.com, and we'll make sure that we get an answer from Jean-Louis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being my guest, and yes, let's speak again soon. I can't wait to hear any updates that you have.
Oh yes, we will have a lot, believe me.
Yeah. Thank you. To hear more about our podcasts, showcase events, or the Futureproof Network, please visit us at www.futureproof-network.com.